Congressman Michael Guest is our guest today. So we've got this $2.2 trillion. I don't want to call it an infrastructure bill because that ain't what it is.
No. At least it's not physical infrastructure.
Right.
It's not the thing that we traditionally think of infrastructure. And that's what makes this legislation almost so laughable is, roughly 5% of this infrastructure package actually goes to things that we would consider to be infrastructure, roads and bridges. And so when you're passing $2 trillion and only a little over $115 billion is going for roads and bridges, when we're putting more money in electric cars and charging stations than we are for the roads and bridges that those vehicles will have to travel on, it would seem that our priorities are out of order. And really, if you look at this, more of this goes into things such as additional money for housing, $200+ billion for new housing, $400 billion for home and community care. So much of what is in this bill is not truly infrastructure that we ought not even call it that. We can call it something else at the Biden administration, whatever they want to refer to it, but it is not an infrastructure package, and it does not look like at this point that unless there's going to be some significant changes between what the administration has asked for and what's going to come out of Congress, that you're going to see any Republican support at all.
Yeah, you've got money that is allocated for Medicaid, for example, and you've also got a lot of the Green New Deal is incorporated in there. Family leave and child tax credits and stuff like that has zero to do with infrastructure. But Congressman, the Democrats have gotten pretty clever in their naming of bills, have they not?
No, there's no doubt, and you can name a bill, and then when you read the bill after looking at the title, you're like, these two things don't go together. and so, everything that we're voting on has a catchy name that tries to put Republicans in a very difficult position when we don't support it. And so when people say, well, why don't you support this bill? It talks about fairness for everyone. Well, did you read the bill? Do you know what's in the bill? Is the bill truly fair? Is this something that you support? And so, again, we call this infrastructure. It's not really infrastructure. We called it COVID relief package when we passed the $1.9 trillion. We know that very little of that actually went to fight COVID and to vaccinate individuals. Most of it went to get bailouts to city and state and county governments. And so, again, looking at the title can be very deceptive.
Yep.
The devil is in the details. As we know, you have to read the bill. You have to know what's in it. And unfortunately, much of the public just looks at the title of the bill. They see what's reported by your national news outlets, and they don't really take the time to really dive in and see the details in the legislation.
Yes, you've got the For the People Act. I mean, who could be against the people? And then you dig into it. It's the total, complete federalization of the elections process.
That's right. HR 1, for the people, and that sounds so patriotic, and how could any American not be for the people? But what they're actually advocating, if you read the bill, is a federal takeover of our election process.
Right.
Completely throwing out the fact that the Constitution says that the state legislature should make laws regarding the place, the time, the carrying out of our elections, and we want to federalize that. And we want to do away with many of the hard-fought things that many of us have worked for. Voter ID, which I think has worked extremely well in Mississippi.
Sure.
And I believe that in today's society that everyone has some form of identification. We have to show that every time we drive an automobile, every time we get on a plane, repeatedly, day in and day out, and you have to show an ID. I think it's only fair to have to show an ID when you vote. But HR 1, the For the People Act, would remove that and say you cannot ask for an ID. It would require things such as same-day voter registration, which is very difficult for states to be able to allow people to come in and register on the same day that they're voting. And so, again, if you look at what's the wording and the changes in the legislation, it often doesn't match up with the title of these bills.
You look at the Georgia election integrity law, and it's one thing that corporations, I think, are jumping to conclusions and lashing out at it, which I think is way outside of their swim lane, first of all. But it's even more disturbing that the president of this country is calling out a state.
And is encouraging these corporations to boycott the state of Georgia.
Well, they're taking his lead. I believe I think they're responding to him. But his description of the law as Jim Crow 2.0 is just a farce. It is not accurate. And the gap between true Jim Crow laws and this law, that's a chasm bigger than the Grand Canyon. It's disingenuous. The president's got to be better than that.
Well, you're right. He's sowing seeds of division. Kind of getting back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. He talked about being a unifier, bringing all Americans together under the auspices of we've got to work together to build this country and make this country better. But what he's trying to do with this is we see he's sowing seeds of division between Republicans and Democrats, between African Americans and Caucasians, between rural America and urban America. That seems to be what this president is doing, and he is doing the complete opposite of what he campaigned that he was going to do if we elected him as our president. And
the media has just evolved into Democrat operatives. They're just spokespeople for the Democrat Party. Look no further than the 60 Minutes and Governor Ron DeSantis debacle, which was truly ridiculous. And I thought Governor DeSantis handled that quite well. His response. First, he keeps us cool. I like the way he does that. And he just drills immediately into the facts. And he espouses the facts. And he calls people out for not being factual in their reporting and their analysis. And this whole deal with their allegation that he had some payback with Publix, which is crazy. Publix, a major corporation and a very well-respected company, 800 locations across Florida, I think all of which have pharmacies. Of course it makes sense for them to help get the vaccine out. And they accused him of simply doing a political favor for them on a $100,000 donation to his campaign. They give to everybody, Democrats, Bernie Sanders, which is typical for a lot of big companies like that. But the media is to blame here.
That's right. If you look at the media and how they have portrayed COVID in various parts of the United States, and even President Biden, when we removed the mask mandate, when Governor Reeves did that at the same time Texas did, he called that neanderthal thinking. So when you see these talking heads on many of your national media outlets, they're talking down to states that have reopened their economy, that is looking at science. They're looking at reinfection rates. They're looking at hospitalization. They're looking at ICU bed space capacity, and they're saying, you know what, we've been able to vaccinate people. Things are trending in the right direction. We want to reopen our economy. We want to help our businesses to flourish, and we want to remove some of the restrictions that we had to put in place. And the national media does not like that. When I go to Washington, D.C., I will tell you it is entirely different the way that they look and view mask mandates and opening businesses than here in Mississippi. When you walk up and down the street and outside in Washington, D.C., I'm probably one of the few people that does not wear a mask. And again, once you're outside, I've been vaccinated. When I'm outside, I don't feel the need to wear a mask out in public unless I'm going to be right up underneath somebody. And then at times I will do that for their comfort level.
Right.
But they look at you almost like you're from another planet, and they'll stare at you because you don't have a mask on, because they feel like that they know better than we do about how we need to take precautions for ourselves and our family.
You're being demonized for that, essentially.
No doubt.
And
that Neanderthal thinking from Mississippi.
But, to your point, Congressman, I don't know if folks paid attention to this, but you had opening day in Major League Baseball, and you've got the contrast, the stark contrast. Over in Arlington, Texas, the Rangers game, 40,000 packed in the stadium, many of whom didn't have masks on. 20% capacity at Yankees opening day in New York.
That's right. And to me, it was great to see what they were doing in Texas, allowing the fans back in the stadium and allowing people to make those personal health decisions.
And the red states are showing that their economic recoveries are way ahead of the blue states. They continue to be shut down, locked down for no apparent reason, best I can tell. Congressman, always a pleasure.